welcome and thank you very much for joining. Just very first communication, we'll be recording this meeting. There's a few people who couldn't join. There's a few people in very uncomfortable time zones that won't be able to attend. So we'll be sharing this meeting widely, the recording widely. And again, thank you very much. This is the annual meeting of the of UNDP's Disability Inclusion Network, organized jointly by the Bureau for Policy and Program Support and the Bureau for Management Services. And I'm here today with my colleague Maria Teresa Lago Lao and our colleague Enrique. From the Bureau for Management Services. My name is Alessandro Colani. I'm a governance analyst in the Bureau for Policy and Program Support, BPPS, based in New York. And I am the Global Disability Inclusion focal point for UNDP for matters related to programming. I will very briefly go through the scope of this meeting and who will be speaking and a little bit of the structure, and then we'll really just jump right into the presentation from our colleagues today. Just for those connecting with us for the first time, the Disability Inclusion Network was created in 2022, back in 2022. It's been a couple of years now. To respond to the need to link together just the incredible work that was taking place at country level and across the house, across offices, bureaus, units, hubs on disability inclusion matters. And that's not only about programming, that is also about the operations aspect of it all. So colleagues that were creating networks, disability inclusion networks at country level, colleagues that were really championing issues related to reasonable accommodation, inclusion, recruitment, and so on and so forth. So we thought we would give it a bit of a boost, and we thought we would start learning from each other and really scale up these solutions that were taking place at country level. And so we created this network together with BMS, and since then it's been really just bringing together people across the house, and really it is a hub for conversation around disability inclusion issues. Within the scope of this network, we started hosting what we call disability inclusion cafes. There are 1-hour meetings where we go deep into issues that colleagues working on disability inclusion may face or may be eventually working on. So we had cafes on reasonable accommodation, inclusive recruitment, accessibility, and so on and so forth. And then we also had conversations around programming related matters. And this year we seized the opportunity that was presented by what UNDP has been calling the super year of election. This year, 2024, for the first time, it has been the year in which the highest number of people have been entitled to vote across the world. And so we also ask ourselves the question, what does this mean for persons with disabilities? What are the barriers and the considerations that we need to account for when we talk about inclusive democratic processes and disability inclusion? And so we also hosted this year. The Disability Inclusion Network, just to frame it, is an internal network of UNDP, and at times we have hosted colleagues from across the UN system and outside of the UN system to come in and speak. all these learnings, all these cafes have been made available on the Bureau for Management Services intranet page. We will be posting the link in the chat shortly, so you will have access not only to the recordings of these cafes, but also to a few other very useful resources that you may end up using on a daily basis in your work. In terms of structure today, the framework of this meeting, will be hearing from three incredible presenters and friends of the network. We'll be hearing first from Alisa Sviatorn. Alisa is a disability inclusion and empowerment specialist in UNDP's regional hub in Bangkok. Thank you, Alisa. We'll then be hearing from Rebecca Webb, Becky, from the media and advocacy team of the Bureau of External Relationship and Advocacy. I hope I can see you there, Becky. And then last but not least, from our friend Fred Smith. Fred is a technical, he's a program support technical specialist from the Technical Secretariat of the Global Disability Fund, the UN Global Disability Fund. You might have heard of that from a different name, the United Nations Partnership on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We will then open up for a Q&A, and then I'll hand it over to Maria Teresa for some closing remarks and some next steps and announcements. We have, I see that Enrique must have already dropped it in the chat. We do encourage the use of the chat for questions. Please do use that extensively. We hope we'll be able to address all your questions. But first of all, we don't expect to do so in the scope of a 1 hour and 15 minutes meeting. And we do hope that this is a much longer conversation that we can keep having on the network. We will also paste the link to the TeamSpace where the network is actually run. It's a public TeamSpace if you're within UNDP, of course. So you can just click the link that we'll paste in the chat, join the network. You'll be able to hear from colleagues across the house, but you'll be able also to share what's going on in your team, in your office, in your country, and your work. Without further ado, I'll just hand it over to Alisa. Thank you, Alisa, for joining us so late. And over to you, Alisa.
Hello, Alessandro. Hello, everyone.
I'm sorry for jumping in. The chat is disabled. If it is possible to open
Apologies,
that so
of course.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting.
Right away. No, that's actually, thank you. You should be able to do it now. Let us know if you can't do that.
Yeah, good.
It works now? Fantastic. All right. Alisa, apologies. Thank you very much again. The one thing that we wanted to hear from you, I mean, there's just so many things that we want to hear from you, and we've been hearing from you, by the way. But we we've been looking at the way that the regional hub and the Asia Pacific team has been advancing and really just bringing to the next level the regional networking and within the office, outside of the office, and how we brought together the the programming aspect of your work, but also the operations aspect of your work in this really holistic, integrated approach to disability inclusion. What happened? How did you do it? Can you give us a few tips about that?
Okay, sure. Thank you, Alessandro, and good evening, everyone from Bangkok again. And this month is actually the celebration of the International Day of Persons with Disability as well. And we at the Regional Hub, we also have a plan to celebrate that. But before we go into that, I'd like to share a few points of our work in RBAP and also how did we do it. Maybe Enrique, if you could allow my colleague. Oh, thank you, Vivian. So basically, what we do, I think the first thing first that have actually encouraged our regional to achieve or to advance disability inclusion in this far, because the regional hub sees the importance of hiring person with disability as a theme is co-in-line with the theme of the IDPD this year is amplifying the leadership of person with disability. I think this is the key success in our region. They hired me to lead on this initiative, to lead on disability inclusion. Nobody else can speak as loud as person with disability on the topic of person with disability. So the scope of work, we divided scope of work into 4 areas. One is focusing internally, which is BRS, and also we focus not kind of externally, but outside the office, which is the community of practice, with our focal points around Asia and the Pacific. And also we work closely with the interagency working group on disability inclusion as well. And also another last thing that we are trying to do is a pilot project, actually, is mainstreaming disability inclusion. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about BRS, or Bangkok Regional Hub, first. Basically, we realize that in every offices, people comes and goes all the time. You have new people joining in all year round. So we basically provide disability inclusion training to all staffs in BRS, but we also open to the whole IBAP as well. So, but it's kind of like mandatory for all staffs to join. All staff, I mean, the BRS all staff. So we organize twice a year at the very minimum, like the beginning of the year and towards the end of the year, so that people who just join, they have opportunity to understand, to hear about disability inclusion more. And we also provide training on various demand, depends on which team reach out to us and we provide training. For example, the MEL team might want to learn about the Washington group set of questions, or there would be asking to support on inclusive SDGs, or things like that. So we try to provide as much as possible that we have the capacity. Next slide, please. And then we expand our work from the office to the country offices, who we, of course, have to support on various projects. And first of all, you need to understand your country offices. We started by getting to know each country offices, getting to know our disability focal points. We give time to them to listen to the problem, the challenges, the solution. And then what we do, we not only provide technical support on their demand, but we also matching them up For example, if this country would like to learn about how they can best talk to their national government, then we would link them up with the country who have best practice on working with national governments. So we how can we say, we mapping the experts all over the Asia and the Pacific and link them up with whoever wants to learn from each other and stuff. But by all means, we still support our country offices, depends on the demand as well. So whatever they reach out to us, even though I don't know I don't know that particular topics, but I will do my best. But it also gives me the opportunity to learn and relearn about disability inclusion, because of course, we do not know everything about disability inclusion, even though I'm a person with disability, right? So it just like give me opportunity to relearn and to re-understand the topic that our country offices reach out. Next to the interagency group, please. In Asian Pacific, we do have interagency working group, which is we call the Working Group on Disability Inclusion in Asian Pacific. At the moment, we have 10 agencies, the regional agency working together, and UNDP this year is taking the chair of this group. So we try to not only just like arrange the meeting and then say hi and hello and like how's going on, but we also trying to collect fact sheet, who's doing what and where, and how can each agency support other agency to the best capacity that we could. For example, on the Beijing Declaration just passed, the UN working group, we organized the side event on women with disability, and that was one of the success side events in the Beijing ministerial conference as well. So we try to support our other agency in connecting with the regional OPDs, since, as I mentioned, that I'm a person with disability, so I have quite extensive network on person with disability. So I know them, but some of the agencies that don't have that capacity, they don't have that network. So we link them up with the network that we have. And we also support EOSG in organizing UNDIS training, the one that just passed last month for Asia and Pacific. So it was fun and it was very informative. We get to know like other focal points from other agencies, and yeah, we learned a lot from each other. So next slide, please. On mainstreaming, we realized that disability inclusion cannot be only the targeted approach. So how can we start it to be the mainstream one? We need a team that's willing to be our guinea pigs or the pilot study. So we started within the youth team, because Ben, who is my supervisor and also my colleague, he also leading on the youth portfolio. So that is the best place to start mainstreaming disability inclusion. So we started by introducing young person with disability. We started by including the voices of young person with disability from the very beginning, from the plan up to the implementation part. So in youth team, they have 4 set area of work. So we try to provide or support young person with disability within each pillar of the youth team, whether it's about climate change, political participation, digital infrastructure, or youth collab. The youth collab one is quite successful because they already recruited young person with disability who's the entrepreneurs in the region, and they provide a support, mentorship, and working along with each other very nicely. Next slide, please. Maybe go to the last slide. And sorry for the advertisement. And this is the flyer for our coming event on the 9th of December. We also working, arranging the event together with other UN agencies as well on the celebrating International Day of Person with Disability. So that is all my sharing. Thank you, Alessandro.
Thank you, Elisa. And please do share with us the direct link for the event. So we'll be happy to share it widely with the network and with everyone. Thank you so incredibly much for this presentation. It would probably take a couple of days to unpack all of this and to go through the just the amazing work that you folks are doing in Bangkok. I just wanted to really stress the how beautifully your team is really integrating the mainstreaming and the targeting components of our disability inclusion work together, and how you're doing it not only strictly speaking within the disability inclusion work, but you're really just pushing the boundaries there and really living up to that, leaving no one behind promise in a quite a holistic, quite integrated way. So thank you so very much for that. And please, colleagues, do reach out to Elisa for any questions or through the network. Our next speaker is Rebecca Webb. Becky joins us from BERA, the Bureau of External Relationship and Advocacy. And Becky, we heard from Elisa. She mentioned the International Day of Persons with Disabilities coming up, actually tomorrow. You've been really just leading the charge on our comms for the International Day of Persons with Disabilities and around it. Our corporate campaign over the past years and since I can remember. So what is brewing? What can you share with us? How should we be communicating about that? And well, I'll just stop here and over to you. Thank you, Becky.
Thanks, Alessandro, and nice to be here and joining everyone. We have been doing a lot for International Day of Persons with Disabilities, gearing up for tomorrow. But just to backtrack a little bit, I just wanted to start by looking at this year and what our communications are focused on. And Alessandro, you touched on it at the beginning. We've really been focusing this year on super year of elections. It's the big kind of umbrella theme. And what that's meant in terms of inclusion and particularly disability inclusion. So we've been running a campaign since earlier this year, and disability inclusion was integrated into every aspect of that campaign. So the campaign key messages focused on disability inclusion. You can see here on the screen on the right, there is what was essentially the call to action, which was to everybody to protect rights, embrace inclusion, and rebuild trust. We had a campaign video. We also produced an ISL embedded version of that for International Day of Sign Languages. We did numerous web stories. We had content from all over the world. We focused a lot on Mozambique, where elections took place this year. We had a whole section from there, which was featured on UN News, which was also around the work that the country office has been doing with other UN partners to ensure disability inclusion was front and centre. So there was this whole package of communications materials that was shared with global comms officers. All of this I will put in the chat if you're still interested, if you'd like to see what we did, what we've been saying, how you can help promote for the rest of this year. It's still very relevant. And within that, I think the other thing to mention from this year as well is this increasing desire to focus more on our partners and more on donor communications too. So the Mozambique story particularly was shared with key donors. If we go on to the next slide, you can see that with thanks to Alessandro and Maria Teresa, we were able to write a piece for Germany for an internal newsletter, again, focusing on inclusion in political processes. And that's going to be more and more a focus, I think, as we go ahead. We've been hoping to do a joint donor blog, and that's still something that we want to focus on, where we can really show our impact to partners, to donors, and help kind of, I mean, you used the phrase before, Alessandro, about leading the charge, but really try and show, you know, what our advocacy messages are, what is it that we're calling for, and how are we putting that into action. And then I think on the next slide, the other thing to mention is we're increasingly looking at, you know, inside the organisation, what are we doing in UNDP to help drive this change? So this year, and again, I'll put this in the chat, for International Day of Persons with Disabilities, we have published a piece today, which is on the intranet, which is an interview with a colleague from the Dominican Republic called Olga. You can see a snapshot of that just above. On our Trello board, which has all our communications assets for tomorrow, again, I'm going to put it in the chat in a moment. We also have this video from UNDP Kenya, which is focusing on disability inclusion within that country office. And you may recall our global feature for last year focused, and I think Adriana might be on the call actually, who's featured in this presentation here. And we focused on our partnership with UMV. So there was a global web story, and we spoke to colleagues from Pakistan, Colombia, and Malawi. And so we're building on that this year. And that is why, if you come to the next slide, in addition to the intranet piece, what we've really done this year for our global piece is we have handed it over to our country offices to ask them, what would you like to focus on? What are the stories you want to tell? And we have a global piece which has just been published, which features stories from, I think, Ukraine, Antigua and Barbuda. We also have a piece from Zimbabwe. There's multiple pieces in there that are really showing the very, very diverse and different kinds of support that UNDP is providing. And I think that's important. And actually, you can see on the right here, the image there is from a new partnership that the Ukraine country office are working on with Halo Trust. And they also have a short video on YouTube, which again, I can share the links to because it's really powerful. But all of these materials, all going to be available on the Trello board. I sent out a message about a week ago to our UNDP Global Comms Network. So all of our communications colleagues should have received that. We have key messages so that, you know, there's a common language that can help guide people's communications. We have new social media assets. And then we have that amazing collection of stories from around the world, whether it's blogs, videos, photos. There's a huge amount of content. So I think I'd just finish up by saying thank you to everyone who shared their content. I know listening to Alyssa, it was interesting hearing all the great work that's been going on in Bangkok, and I know your comms colleagues have also been in touch as well, and their stories are on the Trello too. Please do keep sharing your stories. Please do keep sharing your content, and we look forward to helping promote. And I think that's everything from me. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or come directly to me. As I say, I'll put all these different links in there as well, so all the comms materials will be available. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. That's incredible. Thanks so much for the past years too. It's been great working with you and your team. We're also going to be releasing probably today the video message from UNDP administrator, and that will be also posted on a few social media channels, focusing again on this year's theme, that is advancing the leadership of persons with disabilities. I would like to thank you very much, Becky, once again. Please, colleagues, do reach out to Becky to share your stories. The repository that she is building is just incredible. It really helps us tell a story about our work that is relevant not just for the donors that we work with and to boost that resource mobilization efforts, but also internally to start looking up at other country offices and really scale up our efforts. Alfred, you next in line. Fred, I'm sure I must have made a mistake about your title, so I'm just gonna repeat it a bit. I mumbled a little bit there. It's Technical Program Support Specialist. Most of, if not all of the colleagues across our country offices know what the formerly United Nations Partnership on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, UNPRPD, is now Global Disability Fund. But I want to assume that a lot of our colleagues are connecting with us today for the first time. So I'm just gonna hand it over to you, and why don't you run us through the UN Global Disability Fund. You tell us what it is, what are the opportunities for joint programming and for collaboration at country level and the global level. Thanks so much, Fred.
Sure, thanks, Alessandro, and yeah, good evening and good morning to colleagues around the world. I'm going to introduce the fund, as Alessandro said, and then go through a bit more details about our programming. But it's great to see, I recognise a lot of the names in the participants, so I think a lot of colleagues are involved in the programming that we do, which is brilliant. And thank you for inviting the fund to participate today. So we are a multi-partner trust fund, and we're very kindly hosted by UNDP. Our technical secretariat is in New York, but we also have a lot of other member UN agencies. So we're up to 13 at the moment, which is brilliant because the fund exists to kind of bring the different agencies together to accelerate inclusive programming across different areas. So we've got 13 different members. The ITU, World Food Programme, UNHCR are the kind of latest members, which is brilliant to have them on board. And we also have civil society partners on our in our governance processes. So that includes the International Disability Alliance and the International Disability and Development Consortium. And our main donors are displayed on this side. I won't go through them all, but there's a lot of support from Australia, Finland and Sweden. And we're always working hard to try and attract more, of course, as all colleagues are. And what we do, so we do two types of programming at the moment, which is national programming, multi-country programming, but both formats address different needs in a few different ways, but they all have a few core components. The first is really about identifying what the need is. So what are the gaps essentially around CRPD implementation, and how can our programmings, how can the UN working together address those gaps? They'll always have components of capacity building for national stakeholders, but we don't just mean government ministries, departments and agencies. It could be working with organisations of persons with disabilities on areas that they want to address more, for example, increasing knowledge around climate adaptation, and then mainstreaming. So we're always talking about the kind of twin track approach of where can mainstream services be more accessible, but where are targeted disability support services required. And when we talk about the preconditions, or when we look at the gaps in terms of CRPD implementation, at the moment there are around 5 core areas. The first is equality and non-discrimination. So that's really about policies and legislation. Where are the gaps there that need to change? So once a country has ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, what legislation needs to be reviewed or changed and strengthened so it aligns with the CRPD. Then we look at inclusive service delivery, and again that's about mainstream services, so making health or education accessible, but also support services. So how can persons with disabilities get the services that they need to live independently and autonomously in their communities? Accessibility is always a core component to look at in terms of where are the gaps and what needs to be addressed, whether it's physical infrastructure or, again, what might be needed to accelerate access to services. Budgeting is a critical area. There tends to be, unfortunately, a lot of gaps and a lot of unfortunately not a lot of information on how to do this well. So that's a kind of core component that always our programs will look into. And then crucially, the accountability and governance side. So that could be data systems, but it could also be the monitoring mechanisms that should be in place to accelerate implementation of the CRPD. It could be around the kind of multi-stakeholder mechanisms around Article 33 as well. So there's a lot of different areas that we're trying to address, and our programs might not cover all of those components, but they're where we look at in terms of the gaps are. And then we'd be looking at specific services within that. Across all of those topics, everything that we've talked about, there are some really important cross-cutting areas that, again, all of our programs need to address and look into, particularly around gender equality and the rights of women and girls with disabilities who can face lots of multiple and kind of intersecting discriminatory factors that need to be addressed. Of course, ensuring the systematic participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organisations. And increasingly, we're really trying to encourage our programs to think about underrepresentation. So who are the persons with disabilities who might not be represented or engaged at national level, and really trying to localise the issue. A couple of our programs have created the first kind of women with disabilities networks, which is great, but in certain contexts, it might be persons with albinism who need to be engaged. It's really about encouraging the programs to think about who isn't around the table that should be in their context. So overall, I'm just displaying a slide that has quite a lot of numbers on it, but basically since 2012, we've had 108 joint programs across 95 countries. So our global footprint is quite big. That's led to over 100 different policies and legislations being revised. A lot of different system changes. That's the 241. Big numbers on capacity building, which is great, but our programs need to deliver the system changes as well. And lots, 1,673, it says, organisations of persons with disabilities have participated in our programs. A core component of what we do, and I wanted to share this, colleagues, because it's a really helpful resource to look at, but our situational analysis. So they exist, all of the programs in the current model do a kind of capacity building program and then undertake situational analysis. And the reason for that is to see what at national level are the main issues and what could the program address based on what the evidence has shown us. We have all of our round 4 programs, which is 34, and we've got an additional 13 happening at the moment rather than 14. And I'll put a link in the chat to this and make sure that colleagues share this with the resources that go around, because it's just helpful to see what is happening, what the issues are. Generally speaking, so this is a generalization given all of the numbers I've gone through, but we see patterns in terms of what the issues we're all facing in terms of addressing the issues around CRPD implementation. There are kind of persistent issues with a medical model understanding, laws and policies that a country might have ratified the CRPD, but there might be a lot of existing legislation that predates the CRPD that's really discriminatory and needs to be addressed. Coordination mechanisms don't tend to be particularly strong, neither do monitoring. So that's in terms of, it might be the independent monitoring mechanism responsible for the CRPD, but it could also be the data systems. Services generally are not good enough, and quite often the disability movement itself might be a little bit uncoordinated or need targeted capacity building. So these are big issues. I think everyone on this network is aware of the issues, and that's why it's such an important topic that we all work on to address. Just briefly, we have a lot of programs operational right now. So we have 29 currently in their implementation phase, so currently delivering, another 28 that are in their inception. So that's when they undertake the kind of situational analysis, work out what needs to be addressed, and then develop a program. We have 5 multi-country programs. So that's the different model that is about identifying kind of innovation gaps to address. And we also have 54 more countries that we haven't worked in yet. that we haven't been able to get to because of the resource gaps that we have. So the scale and need, I think, again, everyone on this call appreciates this, is large on disability, which is why it's great that we have forums like this that bring us all together. Very briefly, I just want to show you the different topics that our national programs address, because there are interesting patterns here, and the breadth of what we try to cover. Most programs, so we've got 24 out of the 29 that are currently in implementation, will address legislation, but also we have those working on disability determination systems, different forms of service delivery, budgeting, data, and increasingly we group them at the moment, but I think we'll need to separate them soon around the work we do under DRR and humanitarian and climate change, which is really important that national partners are becoming more interested in addressing these because they're critical issues. My final slide before I hand back, Alessandro, is just to say, so you mentioned at the start, we are becoming the Global Disability Fund, which is really exciting for us. Because it really clearly communicates what we're about and what we're doing. From next year, we will have a new strategy. It isn't completely defined yet, but I thought it would be helpful to share a bit of a sense of the direction it's taking. We'll still be very focused on systems change, because that's the big priority around disability inclusion. So we'll still be delivering national programs, and that will continue to bring together all of the partners at national level, and it will continue to generate learning and innovation. But we know that we need to be a little bit more context responsive. At the moment, we undertake one training program, undertake the situational analysis, but actually different contexts obviously have very different issues around disability inclusion. So we're trying to make sure that the new way of working is more responsive to that. That we really focus in on some core sectors where we see big gaps, and we know that you guys as the implementing agencies with the others can really help us accelerate change. We need to innovate. We want to focus more on innovation around where there are gaps, where we see there are gaps, and in which contexts actually have done great work on legislation, but now they can kind of role model or work up different ways of approaching this. Critically, we have to keep influencing the global agenda, and it was great to hear Rebecca talk about what's happening around December 3rd, because still, I think, again, everyone on this call knows this, but disability is still pretty underrepresented in the global space, and it should be a priority for anyone working on development. So that's going to be a core part of what we do. And then, of course, continuing to engage really strongly with OPDs, with the governments, with national partners, because that's where the change needs to happen. So yeah, I've run through a lot there, but obviously very happy to be here this morning and take any questions that you have. Thanks, Alessandro.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks so much. And I think, again, this is the, we really want to make clear that this is the start of a conversation, right? So for anyone who's interested in following up about on this, please to reach out to us, or even just bother Fred directly, and he'll be more than happy to address your questions. Just one quick follow-up. I guess the new structure, the finalization of the new strategy will come with different ways and procedures through which agencies can engage with the PRPD. Sorry, my bad. With the Global Disability Fund. Is that a correct assumption? And we will know more about that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the key thing to say is that we're expecting to have more calls for proposals next year. So once we have got the new strategy finalized, once we're clear on the approach, essentially the modes for the member agencies to engage with us, I would expect them to look pretty similar in terms of there will be calls from us as the Secretariat to say these are the opportunities. They might look a little bit different, and I think that's what I mentioned in that last slide is it might not be as broad as in the past when we've basically said all the countries that are interested, let us know, and that's how we've got that long list. It might be that little bit more targeted, and context responsive. So what are the issues that we think would apply, and where would we really like to see kind of proposals? But there'll be a clear process set out for that. We'll communicate that to all the partner agencies. It'll definitely be happening at some point next year. The details will become clearer, but there'll be opportunities, and what we've done in the past and we'll do is we'll probably run webinars to say, if you're interested in hearing about what the call is about, then join these sessions. So we'll be clearly communicating everything, and yeah, there'll be opportunities to keep working together.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you very much. Once again, super clear, super interesting. We'll be on hold, and we've been waiting for more information, and we'll make sure to share them with our colleagues across our countries as soon as we know more. Want to try and have as much time for Q&A as possible, so I'm just gonna hand it over to Teresa to facilitate that Q&A with amazing big thanks to Alisa, Becky, and Fred for your presentation. Just incredible. Colleagues, if you don't have a chance to follow up in the Q&A, just, you can reach out to these folks. Teresa, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, and thank you very much to all the speakers. It's been great listening to you and getting also information from different corners of the organization. I think sometimes this is one of the most difficult pieces, right? To get to understand how our efforts to advance disability inclusion are ongoing from different perspectives. And this is a key message from today's meeting. It is important for all of us to move this agenda forward. It is not something that I can do from where I'm sitting, or that Alessandro can do from his position. This is something that is the responsibility of every one of us. Disability inclusion needs to be embedded in everything we do as an organization. Persons with disabilities should be at the decision-making tables in every decision that the organization does. When it comes to targeted approaches, yes, absolutely, we understand that very clearly. But when it comes to the mainstreaming work, for example, when we work on climate change projects, this is also something that affects and has an impact on persons with disabilities as a community. So please make sure to keep this idea in mind when you are working on the design of the project, on whatever the nature of it is. And if you have any questions, we're here to support you, to connect you with other colleagues that may have experience on that. And this is what the network is here for. So just a call also for you. And I think, Alfred, very nice to meet you, first of all. But I would also like to take this opportunity to invite you formally. There was great interest in the chat with your presentation. So once we have better understanding of what the new framework is, we will invite you for one of the disability inclusion cafes, so colleagues from across the organization can know how to tap into these wonderful resources. So thank you very much for that. And for anybody else, everybody, colleagues, please reach out to us and present your work. This is not a network, formal, external, where we have to present results and outputs clearly defined. No, this is a network for us to share, to get inspired, to get to accelerate our work, to resolve questions all together. So please present your work whenever you are ready for it. Whenever you have any idea, we will be happy to use this as a platform. So I want to, before we start, and I see a lot of action happening in the chat box, but before we get into that, we wanted to also have this huge announcement, and this is related to one of the questions that we have in the chat box, what we as an organization are doing to support personnel, not only with disabilities, but personnel with dependents with disabilities, family members. It could be a child, it could be a spouse, it could be a parent. So we are going to launch here today, and thank you to the Staff Council. I know there are some representatives here today, so thanks to this collaboration with the Staff Council, we're going to launch today the network of personnel with disabilities with dependents with disabilities. And this is going to be a space for colleagues to exchange, to guide each other into the processes and navigate this organization and its different regulations. Sometimes this is the hardest. So we hope that you can benefit from it. And again, if you know of anybody that has a family member with disabilities, feel free to share this information or connect them with us. The OHR director will be sending a message today or tomorrow with this information. So feel free to forward it to colleagues that you may think could be interested. All right, so without any further ado, let's look into the Q&A. I see a lot of action happening in the chat box, but I'm also happy to hand the floor over to you, colleagues. Please raise your hands, unmute your mics. We want to hear from you. Please, Alexandru, you were very fast, so over to you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alexandru Stratulat. I'm from UNDP Moldova, and I'm program manager for One UN Joint Action Cross River Support for Human Rights. I wanted to give you a feeling about the work which is done in Moldova on disability in a joint manner, but not simply in a joint manner, but also in a context of frozen conflict. Some of you might be aware that we have in Moldova a protracted 30 years conflict with one of the region in the east part of Moldova. So we, 7 agencies, in UNCT Moldova, started a program in 2015. And just a quick glance of what can be achieved, if we are working together with grassroots NGOs from the, local level. We managed to advocate with the de facto structures, not constitutionally, not recognized, to unilaterally sort of say, ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, to take some commitments and to adopt a program which is called the Framework Program on Equal Opportunities for Persons with Disabilities. We are aware that this is just the first step, and when you are working with somebody who is not recognized, who doesn't have international recognition, who does not have a formal structures or representation on the international field, it's difficult to enforce something, sort of say. But nevertheless, there are some actions which have been taken regarding the physical accessibilities for persons with disability. The legislation, well, de facto normative framework, should we say, adjustment in order to improve the situation of persons with disability. Awareness of the population on the non-discrimination of persons with disabilities, and even some actions regarding the employment of persons with disabilities. So currently, the de facto structures in this unrecognized region of Transnistria, they are working on modifying the normative framework in order to provide possibilities for persons with severe and acute disability to be employed by the local enterprises, which was banned before. So my point is, it's important to join forces, not only to try to do it ourselves. There are agencies who are adding the weight, to our voice, because we are the one leading the work on disability in this One UN joint action. But the other agencies are adding the weight to our voice in working with the de facto structures, with duty bearers, with decision makers. So if you are interested in more information, please reach out to me. I will be happy to share our experience in how to work with non-recognized structures in the conflict-affected region. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, for sharing your great experience and reminding us that interagency work is key, especially now that we have this difficult budget climate, right? Budget limitations. So we will welcome you if you're interested, maybe in early next year, to host a cafe and disability inclusion cafe where we can learn more about the work that you are doing more in detail. And we can also invite colleagues that may be having different or similar experiences, right? So we can analyze and look into these matters more deeply. But thank you so much, Alessandro, for sharing this, and we welcome you for the cafes if you are interested. It will be a pleasure. Thank you. Ashura, over to you, please. Ashura, we cannot hear you. I don't know if the interpreter, your interpreter needs to unmute.
Yes, is that okay now? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Sorry, my name is Ashura Michael from Kenya, UNDP Talent and Inclusion Officer. I just want to add to what Alexander has said. True, sometimes it becomes complex when we try to mainstream the issues within our workplace. My experience has been sometimes the idea of duplication of projects which makes us difficult to implement and it leaves a gap. So we need to develop a strategy for 2025 and see how we can bring together all the agencies and have the idea so that to avoid a lot of duplication of activities on disability mainstreaming. And also we have actually adjusted our building so that other agency can do the same in order for us to see how we can mainstream or maybe come up with a working group that can guide the secretariat on each agency can report so that we can have a great impact. With that, on 6th this month, December, we are having a launch on disability status in Kenya, on which we are going to focus on the 3 pillars: infrastructure, economic empowerment, and the report, because it talks about every year we are losing about $6 billion annually because there's a gap on persons with disability. There's this unemployment. So to mitigate this, we'll have a cocktail dinner that we are bringing stakeholders together. So far, we've given it was on a short notice, but we have five stakeholders: NCBA Bank, we have Kenya Airways, and the private sector, who are going to commit to at least have the 8% employment of persons with disabilities. Based on their capacity, they'll have to commit and sign so that we can achieve this, so that at least we'll review and see how best we've done. So I believe we can also emulate this idea so that we can implement with other partners in the UN agencies. But most importantly, we have to make it like regulations, because if we fail, honestly, it will be a shame on us. You can imagine private sectors have gone further than us. They've employed persons with disabilities, but us at the UN, we are still at a lower rate. So sometimes it's because of some resources, but can we use the available resources, the media and what we have? We can partner with the other stakeholders so that we can see that we have improvement on employment of persons with disabilities. So it's very important for us to know that. And also beyond our meeting with the partners, we want to see what we can also do. And one more thing, many times we are concerned about, we do disability as a project. We want to make this as a mainstream program in our work so that it's sustainable. Because when we look at it as a project, it comes on a short term. So we want to make it on a long term so that at least it's visible in our programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ashura. And really the work that UNDP Kenya is doing to engage not only with the government, not only the work that you're doing in your operations to make sure that you walk the talk as an organization, as an office, you're leading these efforts, and also with the private sector. It's really, really amazing how to see how you are accelerating all these efforts through your strategy, which is super comprehensive. So we will definitely bring you as well, if you are interested, to our cafes, this disability inclusion cafes, so we can have a session to learn more about the work that you're doing, the initiatives that you are implementing, and also the results that you are starting to see. I'm sure that there are a lot of lessons learned that we can get through your great work, that we can already start seeing the results. So it's a formal invitation here, Ashura. Very nice to meet you as well. We've been in contact over email, so welcome on board. And yes, we'll be looking forward to learning more from your work.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Nicola, I see you have your hand up, so over to you, please.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for convening this this annual meeting. It's very, very useful. So my name is Nikola Duvnjak. I'm working in South Sudan. I'm head of field office in a remote part of South Sudan. I have, as I wrote briefly in a chat box, I have a progressive hearing disability, struggling and with finding new copy mechanism as the disability is progressing. So far, I mean, I still can be productive. However, I'm looking for some place, for some platform, somewhere I can share my experience. But not only for sharing, for therapeutic reason. I mean, I would like to change to support, contribute, change the culture with UNDP and also with other agencies. I've been working over the last 20 years with international organization, and I haven't, to be honest, I haven't seen much of the progress about the internal inclusion. I've seen the RAMs, accessibility RAMs. I noted on the interview, the questions, do you need some support? But beyond that, to be honest, I do not see much. And I've been trying, I've been advocating in several positions, advocating for changes within my different offices. And while people are very nice and understanding, I did not see any follow-up. Like, for instance, the very, very simple, I don't want to take much of time, just to give a little bit of idea what I think is needed. When I ask for better room, office meeting room, with to putting some kind of the isolation or something, which is very, very cheap thing. I mean, I couldn't even get that. And that was with UNDP. Despite the people are really nice, people are supporting when you approach and explain. But I mean, I think we need a significant change, internally change, not only about raising awareness, but I mean with effective policies. Yeah, I will write to you as you propose. So I hope the discussion can continue. Yeah, thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Nicola. And yes, I hear you. It takes a bit of time to get solutions coming up. And sometimes we need to get to the right person to make things happen, right? For this matter, I'm your person, so please feel free to reach out to me. I will be more than happy to share with you the resources that are available. We can support your office with funding as well for these measures to be implemented, explore what is, that will suit you better, that will suit you best, so that you can continue delivering at your role despite the progression of the hearing loss. So this is something we can discuss, and I would be more than happy to hear to learn from your experience to see how we can do better with other offices. But just, for everybody to know, we have in the organization, there is a reasonable accommodation funding facility that is available. We have guidance note on this for offices to guide offices on this matter of reasonable accommodation, to make sure that There are some measures in place to ensure that colleagues with disabilities have equal opportunities to deliver, equal employment opportunities to deliver and to join the organization as their peers with no disabilities. Again, there is some funding available also to support these measures for so many cases. And I mean, many colleagues here and many colleagues have already tapped into these resources. So I'm happy to guide you, to guide your office to make this happen. So you can see the results and you can, you know, continue delivering in your role without any barriers. But thank you so much for bringing this up also in public. I think this is very important for us to establish this conversation. So thank you for that. Ebru, I see your hand up as well.
Hi everyone, I hope you are well. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey, and I'm working as a disability inclusion specialist at UN Volunteers Roika. I have low vision, my right is blind, and I'm also bipolar depressive. Also, you mentioned it, and my sister has cerebral palsy, which has deeply influenced my involvement in this field. And experiencing barriers and exclusion both personally and within my family has shaped my commitment to advocating for inclusion and addressing systemic barriers. And I just want to share with you that one of the most meaningful experiences during my assignment was working on a disability inclusion video for an upcoming OPD event, Disability Rights Symposium in Istanbul, Turkey. And to ensure full accessibility, we work with Turkish Sign Language interpreters and voiceover artists and provided subtitles among other essential accessibility features. And this process also involved working closely with online volunteers with disabilities, whose insights were invaluable in creating truly inclusive content. And we are currently finalizing the video and the international one. And I hope that future the whole visuals and videos will meet similarly high accessibility standards. The main reason I mentioned this was to underline the need to ensure accessibility in every sense. And I think such initiatives should be sustainable. And I'm also thank you for all for this meeting, because disability inclusion as a human right will only be possible with a consensus. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Ebru, for sharing your personal experience and your professional experience. We're happy to have you at UNDP contributing to this. And thank you for your time. And thank you to all colleagues for your time and your interest in participating in today's meeting. This is what it's going to make it enriching and will keep us, you know, delivering and creating these spaces for all of us to come together and exchange. I see a lot of questions, so thank you very much, Ebru, for that. I see a lot of questions also in the chat box. I think we are running a little bit out of time, so unfortunately we will not be able to share to respond to many of you colleagues. But I wanted to share with you some resources where you will find some of the responses that you may be looking for. We have at UNDP our SharePoint on disability inclusion that has a learner's corner. We have curated a number of learning resources for both how to mainstream disability inclusion into your programming, some framework key documents as well, like the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, so we are familiar with that, the United Disability Inclusion System strategy as well. So colleagues, have a look and take some time to go through the different resources so you get familiarized with them. On the other hand, I wanted to also highlight the online course on disability inclusion. It's a 1-hour course. It's available in Spanish, English, and French. And it's really, really a very compressed opportunity in 1 hour to get a good understanding of disability inclusion and what are the different resources and key concepts available, so we can also not only do our work in an inclusive manner, but also create inclusive work environments. Our offices are also a place where, we don't know if a colleague sitting next to us has a disability, because sometimes disability, as our colleague was sharing before, come in an invisible manner. So, I encourage you to take some time to go through this list of resources, to take the online course on disability inclusion, and make sure that the work that we do and how we do it is inclusive of persons with disabilities. I do not know, Alessandro, if there is anything else you want to add before we close.
Just to say, first of all, thank you, Teresa. And just to say that we will be sharing the recording. I think it would be also a good idea maybe to answer some of these questions in more of a curated FAQ that we can share back with the people who register for this event. We can run it by our speakers to see if we want to add anything, and then we'll share it back with you. I think so everything is on file. I think Enrique has been monitoring the chat quite diligently, so we should be able to do that.
Yes, we will do that, and we'll get back to you, colleagues, so you have the responses and you know where to go. In any case, Alessandro and myself, we both are here to support you in this journey. We don't have the responses to everything. We do not know the best way to do everything, but we will try to accompany you in this journey to make sure that we do the best we can all together. And again, tap into the network. You don't have to come through us to post an announcement, to share resources, to post a question. Feel free to use that network as your own personal resource. Colleagues from other parts of the organization will be sharing with you openly. So let's create that safe space for us to exchange and make use of it as much as you can. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your time today. Thank you so very much to the panelists. I think it was very, very interesting to hear from the work that we are doing all across the organization from these different fields and sectors. And tomorrow is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, as you know. So let's make sure that we amplify our communication efforts so that everybody celebrates on this day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.